What is up, everybody? Hoang Zero here, and today we have for you a brand new deck profile for the BT11 UlforceVeedramon. This is one of the coolest decks, in my opinion, coming out of the BT11 set, and it plays very differently from a lot of decks we've previously had, so I'm really excited to get into it. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, to kick us off, you may notice that our egg choice is a little bit peculiar in comparison to the commonly found Wanyamon, and the reason why we've gone for this card, BT11, is specifically because of how the meta pans out. So BT11 is all turns, once per turn, whenever this Digimon is suspended, you can get plus 1000 DP. And so why this is really important and how we got to here. So originally, we recognized the fact that Black War Greymon is obviously one of the best decks, if not the best deck in the entire format. Being at 13k and forcing you to trade into it is a really huge thing. And so, because we recognize that fact, we wanted to be able to trade our Ulforce into it because we have Evade and they do not have Battle Protection. So being at 13k constantly does give us an advantage in that board state. And so originally we were testing out BT2 Demi-Vmon, Starter Deck Demi-Vmon, and that's all fine in games. And so the issue with Starter Deck Demi-Vmon was that we didn't have 8 cards in hand constantly to obtain the plus 1000 DP. So we got that, we ran BT2 Demi-Vmon, and then with BT2 Demi-Vmon, the biggest thing that we did notice was like it worked. It worked out really well. But then we were like, oh, BT11 literally does the same thing as BT2 Demi-Vmon, but maybe we can trick our opponents into playing Exomon. And then like a couple of jokes later, we were like, wait, Dracomon can search out any Dramon. And so thus began our little adventure using the Babydo Draco package. So we played the 4 Babydomon because, like I said, we want to hit that 13k DP threshold consistently, and it gives us access to Dracomon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And going into our level 3 lineups, we do play the 4 BT11 Vmon. This Vmon is absolutely insane. Not only does it grab all of our pieces, including our Tamers, but also it is extremely important for your Ulforce stack, the first stack that you make, to have memory gain inheritables. And so that's why we do max out on it. Whether it's maxing out from playing a Tamer or whether you restand gain a memory, it does not matter. You just need to gain that memory, because if you pass turn, it feels really bad. So we want to try to minimize that, because with one BT11 Reno, with one BT11 Veedramon, with a Vmon that gains memory, you are able to Evo into Ulforce on one memory and not pass the turn, and then you can continue to extend. So it's really important that we max out on BT11 Vmon because, you know, and then the same logic, max out on the EX1 Vmon because he fundamentally is another BT11 Vmon in terms of that memory gain. So it's really important that we establish that. Next, we play 2 of the Starter Deck UlforceVeedramon Vmons. The reason why we play this is for 2 very interesting reasons. So reason number 1 is that we want to facilitate additional draw power. Being able to keep up our hand size to use Arrow Veedramon's ability to get the security attack +1 is really important, as well as just filtering into cards such as the Omnimon Merciful mode and Ice Wall and stuff like that that is not normally searchable. We also have the ability to warp Digivolve, which can be really impactful later on into the game. If your opponent gets rid of your board state and you pull up the Vmon from raising, and you can warp into the Ulforce, bounce, and then hopefully gain enough memory off of cards like Urena to continue extending. So really good stuff there. And then we play the 2 Dracomon. So Dracomon is a 1/1 green-blue, but if you Evo over Babydomon, it does cost 0. And so where the little magic comes in is the fact that it's on play, check top 4 cards, add 1 Dramon and 1 Exomon. And so because it's any Dramon, you can grab all of your Veedramon pieces. And then originally we were playing Exomon because like it's an additional hit, why not? And Exomon's also searchable by Davis and Blue Memory Boost, but like, it's okay. Exomon is an absolute blowout versus Grandis Kuwagamon, which is a very valid tech that you can do, but into decks like Black War Greymon, it's kind of whatever. Dracomon also has the inheritable that gives you plus 1000 DP when you would unsuspend. So you can use this in combination with the Babydomon to hit 14k DP, which then allows you to trade over the Black War Greymon without having to waste your evade. Dracomon being blue-green does mean that you can grab it off as a green component for Davis, so you can grab 1 blue component and then the green component being Draco, so it's a really fantastic card. Going into our level 4 lineups, we do play the 4 BT11 Veedramon. It's very self-explanatory. This card is allowing you to gain an additional draw power if you need to cycle. It gives you memory when you play Tamer while it's in Swears. It's just really strong stuff overall. Now we do play the 2 Kumamon. Kumamon is absolutely essential in this deck. I think if we had a little bit more space, I'd arguably play a 3rd, but Kumamon is really good because let's say your Ulforce stack gets cleared out, then you can evolve over a Tamer, go into Kuma, and then hopefully climb back into Ulforce and just clear back their board. You can also use it to go for a lethal play because UlforceVeedramon can swing multiple times in a single turn. And then we play the 4 Leomon. So with the Jerry Leo package, it's really effective because you can use the UlforceVeedramon to play out the Jerry for free, which then plays out a Leomon in return. That sets up a double blocker. It also means that if your opponent uses Black or Greymon to try and pop something, they'll pop the Leomon instead, getting you back to memory and a draw. Leomon is also just a really fantastic card slam if you do need to do that. And just in general, it facilitates a lot of defensive utility in the deck, as well as being really annoying for your opponent to try and get through. So there are also a couple of interactions that we'll talk about later on, but yeah, just in general, I think the Leo package is really good. You could cut the Leo package in favor of a more glass cannon style of build, but I do think that starting to learn Ulforce, I think playing a more defensive version like this that still packs a lot of aggression and utility is a pretty good way to go about it. Now, going into our level 5 lineups, we do play the 4 BT11 UlforceVeedramon. This card is absolutely crucial in the current format because versus Black or Greymon, if you were to go into UlforceVeedramon from the starter deck and swing, you would just get blocked or redirected, and then you lose your stack, and then because of that, you have no way to actually go into Ulforce, trigger it, and then unsuspend, which is definitely a really huge issue. And so BT11 UlforceVeedramon is our out to that situation. He allows us to tap himself without having to swing, so then we can go into Ulforce, unsuspend, bounce, etc. UlforceVeedramon is also a fantastic tamer searcher, and then using its ESS, it allows us to recycle Rina's evade blocker so that if we don't have additional copies, we can get that online. And going into our other level 5s, you may notice we played the 1 UlforceVeedramon 0, thanks to my boy Jambo for selling me on this one. And so for the longest time, I thought he was coping on it. I thought it was like really mediocre. And then I thought about it, and so UlforceVeedramon, you evolve into it, and then UlforceVeedramon hits 10k offensive effect because it's plus 3000 DP. And then if you have a Rina, you can use Rina to reuse the UlforceVeedramon effect, so the UlforceVeedramon now hits 13k DP. At 13k DP, your opponent is not going to trade away their Black or Greymon stack. It is the fact that we can go into this and force out a trade at worst for our opponent is really good. So it makes it a really awkward situation for them. Nonetheless, it's a pretty interesting tech. It also has some synergy with the Ulforce 0 that we'll talk about a little bit. But yeah, so UlforceVeedra 0 is really good, I think, in the Black or Greymon X matchup specifically. And then its ESS, it gives you some additional DP, which is really nice, of course, to swing over Black or Greymon X like we previously mentioned. And then we do have the 2 starter deck UlforceVeedramons. These UlforceVeedramons, the jamming is really nice to set up for lethal plays, and the security attack +1 gives you some OTK potentials if you have Rina plus an additional tamer. Going into our level 6s, we do play the 4 BT11 UlforceVeedramon. Card is very self-explanatory. It's the bread and butter boss card of this deck. It's going to play as a free tamer. It's going to bounce. It's going to restand. It just does everything you want it to. It'll cook you dinner, give you a bath. Like, it's, what doesn't it do, right? So this card, very efficient with how the deck plays out. Play out a free Davis, play out Sora Joe, Rina, etc. You can get back a lot of memory. It has a lot of utility. It's just great overall. No reason to not play 4 of this card. You want to see it as often as possible, because if you don't see this, your entire deck falls apart, because our early to mid is kind of shaky. And then we do play the 1 UlforceVeedra 0. Using Rina, you can create a pseudo loop to continuously attack as long as you have fodder in the trash. The reason why we do play the 0 is because it gives us a really nice tech into grindier matchups. So like versus Mostamon, for example, if they don't have the retaliation blockers up, you can continuously attack into their security, and the only way they can out you is using the Chaos Degradation. And if you're asking like, oh, how do we like make sure Mosse doesn't have like retaliation blocker and stuff like that? Well, then you can use previous UlforceVeedramons to tempo out, block, bounce them, etc. And so it's a really nice late game card. And then it's also fundamentally a 3-cost evolution as well because of its effect to gain back a memory, so that's also a really nifty thing. Going into our level 7s, we do play 1 level 7, and originally this was Examon because I like the idea of grabbing it off of Davis and Dracomon, but realistically speaking, we need an additional way to force out a pop versus Black or Greymon X, and so we've decided to opt into the Omnimon Merciful mode. And so with Merciful mode, you do get 1 pop. You can bot deck 10 cards from your opponent's trash, so like if you're playing against Moste, for example, or even Security Control, you can put them back, so to deny them their Magna Angemons, their Gatomons, etc., whatever it may be. And then you can purge back down into the UlforceVeedramon to continue your plays on the following turn. Yes, it's an unsearchable level 7, and that's where the starter deck of Veedramon comes in to help us to facilitate some additional draw power. Going into our option choices, we do play the one Ice Wall, and so with the Ice Wall, cards are really fantastic in terms of defensive utility, giving us additional time to try and set up against our opponent. It can also stop lethal, and it's a really strong security check. We play the 2 Blue Memory Boost. Blue Memory Boost is really good in giving us additional consistency, enabling additional combos, lets us play more tamers if we need to keep comboing off. Really no reason not to play Blue Memory Boost. And then, thanks to Fenton, we have the one win rate 60%. This card is absolutely cracked with any Digimon that costs 4 to evolve into. Win rate 60% does mean that we can go into our UlforceVeedramon for 2 memories. Then we can unexpectedly get, catch our opponent off guard. We can also cheat into ArrowVeedramon for 2 memory if that is the play we do need to make, because again, gives us a little bit of a surprise factor that your opponent may not be expecting. So I can go into that really early on. And then with our tamers, we do play a total of, I believe this is, 11 tamers. So we have the 4 arena. You should never play any less than 4. This card is your bread and butter. You need to see this as soon as possible because it enables literally everything in your deck. It gives you blocker, it gives you evade, and it also works during both players' turns actually. So what you can do, funny enough, is so if you have your UlforceVeedramon on your opponent's board and you have an untapped arena, if they tap your Ulforce somehow, if they make you block or they try to pop it and you force to evade, etc., you can tap the arena. And then using the arena effect, you can use UlforceVeedramon's when Digivolving effect during your opponent's turn, play out a Jerry, and then using that Jerry, you can play out a Leomon during your opponent's turn. And you can use that to eat a certain procs or block, etc. So really, really cool stuff right there. Not to mention the fact that you can chain into gaining additional memory and such. We play the 2 Davis. Playing a Davis off of the UlforceVeedra is super impactful, but you do recognize the fact that it has a bit of a diminishing return effect because the 2nd and 3rd Davis is nowhere near as impactful as the 1st, and so we only played 2 copies. I've seen a world where you play 3, really up to player discretion. And we play the 1 Sora Joe. Sora Joe is really fantastic at warding off your opponent from trying to play floodgates. It stops your opponent from trying to go too wide. It's a really fantastic way to end out your turn. You can use it to strip out additional sources if there's something problematic. Just in general, I think it's a really interesting tech that my boy Justin told me about. So I really, really do think that it can be a really strong way to keep your opponent, from going too crazy. Because with that additional memory, that's another tamer. That's another way for you to evolve, etc. We play the 3 Jerry, and with the Jerry Leomon ratio, it's more important for us to see Leomon than it is for us to see Jerry. Just because Leomon can be used to evolve, we can hard slam Leomon, etc. Whereas Jerry doesn't have a lot of super huge value without Leomon. Whereas Leomon, like I said, has value without Jerry. So we do play at a 3-4 ratio. Jerry getting us additional draw power is nice, however. Playing Jerry off the Ulforce into the Leomon is such a insane combo. And then last but not least, we do have the 1 V-Tamer Taichi. The biggest reason why I like playing this card is because it's a 2-cost tamer, so if we need to squeak out the last tamer for the restand, we can go about that. It can facilitate additional draw, a DP, whatever it really needs to be. But just in general, if there's a one-of tamer that we're going to have in the deck, I think V-Tamer is a nice addition. We previously did play BT2 Rena because it's a tamer that we can slam early on to cycle for our pieces, but I think on average, you're probably going to be okay without it. Just keep that in mind that if you are running into consistency issues, that BT2 Arena is 100% a very valid option. And so what do I think about this deck overall with the current format? Into Mastodon, I think you're actually pretty good, depending on how your build is. With UlforceVeedramon 0, with cards like Arctic Blizzard and such, and Merciful mode, you can do pretty well into Mossday. Black War Greymon is, it is Black War Greymon favorite, I would say, but it is not doomed whatsoever. It's very doable for the UlforceVeedramon player. It just, you have the player finesse it a little bit, so just do be aware of that. That one is going to take a bit of practice. Crossheart is a bit of a 50-50 matchup in my opinion, because you can bounce back and deny them their save procs, as well as their material save procs, so that's really, really good. Then you have a lot of defensive utility in the form of Leomon, in the form of UlforceVeedramon gaining blocker and such. Into Grandis, I think you're actually pretty favored into Grandis. Unless they open the perfect line and OTK you out of the gate, you will always have the ability to react to their stack and bounce them out, and then just put a lot of pressure onto them, so I think it's a really good thing. And yeah. And I think your worst matchup is probably Melga, actually, just because they're way too fast and they just put you on a clock way too early on into the game. So I think Melga is probably your worst matchup. But other than that, I think this is a super, super solid deck that if we, when that ban list does drop later on, I think March 17th, we get the announcement, with the ban list, I think this deck will become very, very, very strong. So yeah, do keep that in mind. So thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and take it easy.